Hi guys, my name is Rhonda and I'm titling this video FibromyWHAT because I am hoping to shed some light on what it's like to live with a chronic illness such as fibromyalgia. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that just don't believe that chronic illnesses exist. Um, I don't blame those people. I'm not mad at them. I really just feel like they feel the way they do because there's not enough awareness out there um, on these chronic illnesses. So I'm just hoping today that I can kind of give an idea about what it's like to have fibromyalgia, and I might also be able to just give you guys some tips on what you can do to communicate with your loved ones better um, about your pain and things like that. So I guess I just want to start with saying that I can remember having the symptoms of fibromyalgia from as early as 13 years old. When I was 13, my parents got divorced, and I just remember that being a difficult time for me because I was also experiencing extreme sensitivity. I had a hard time wearing jeans, and a lot of different fabrics really irritated me. I was also always really, really tired, and I was always in pain. I just never felt good. I don't think that my parents' divorce was the reason for my fibromyalgia. I think I actually had symptoms before that. And I think that it really is the result of a lot of different things. Um, I've heard that fibromyalgia might be linked to viruses and being sick, liver toxicity, just all sorts of different stuff that it could be. Nobody really knows. But prior to 13 years old, I had gotten a really bad case of mono, which I was hospitalized for like a month over. But I had it for several months. And before that, since first grade, I had been a carrier of strep throat, meaning I got strep throat for the first time when I was in first grade, and I got it like 5 to 6 times every year after. A doctor once told me that I was a carrier of strep throat, meaning even when I didn't have the symptoms, I would still test positive for it. So I don't know if that's true. That was just one doctor that told my mom that, and for various reasons, I didn't end up getting my tonsils out until last year. So it could have been that. Just I was constantly sick with the strep throat and then the mono, and I had been on many, many, many antibiotics throughout my whole life, which we all know does affect the body. So it could have been that. I don't think it's hereditary in my situation because I don't know anybody else in my family that has fibromyalgia. Um, but yeah, that's kind of a little bit of background on me. I was finally diagnosed a few years ago. At the time, I didn't even know what fibromyalgia was. My husband and I have been married for 5 years, and the beginning of our marriage was really hard because I was in so much pain all the time, and I had all these symptoms, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me, and so I didn't know how to communicate the way I felt to my husband. So there were a lot of things that just caused problems for us. He would touch me a certain way, and it would hurt, so I'd snap at him, or I'd just always be tired, and he'd want me to get up and go do something, and I just didn't feel like it, and so it caused a lot of problems because he kind of felt like I must not love him, or our marriage. I must have thought our marriage was a mistake, or he thought all sorts of stuff because he didn't understand why me, a perfectly healthy woman on the outside, would be acting the way that I was. So it caused a lot of problems. But eventually, I was typing up my symptoms online. A friend had told me about fibromyalgia, and I realized, wow, that sounds a lot like me. So I started the process of going to the doctor, and I just want to clarify to the people out there that don't believe in chronic illnesses, in order to get diagnosed with fibromyalgia, it's a process. You don't just wake up in pain one day and go to the doctor and walk out with a diagnosis. It the it happens after, you've been in pain for an extended amount of time, and then you go to the doctor, and then you continue to go to the doctor on almost an everyday basis and do all these different tests until you've ruled out every other possibility, and then you're eventually diagnosed with fibromyalgia. It was a really long process. It actually took almost a year for me to get the diagnosis. And in a lot of ways, I kind of wish that I hadn't gotten the diagnosis, because becoming diagnosed has made things even harder for me. I haven't tried to apply to Social Security disability yet, but I did call them to just get an idea of if I would get approved when I eventually do need to apply. And I was told that it's very hard to get approved for disability when you have fibromyalgia. They asked if I had any other symptoms, and I told them, yes, I had the irritable bowel syndrome, and I've also got the chronic fatigue syndrome. And they told me that my best bet would be to apply for disability on the grounds of the irritable bowel syndrome, or even depression if I had a diagnosis of that. And wow, like, I just could not believe that, because basically, when I got diagnosed with the irritable bowel syndrome, it was very, very similar to the process of getting diagnosed for fibromyalgia. It was a process of elimination, making sure that I didn't have anything else, getting, all the tests done. And then finally, they diagnosed me with the irritable bowel syndrome. It's the same thing for the fibromyalgia. And I just couldn't believe, like, somebody, hypothetically, if you were making up your illness, somebody could say that they had stomach problems just as easily as they could say that they were in pain. And yet, disability is more willing to approve people who have stomach problems over people that have chronic pain. So I think that's a little bit backwards, but that's just my own opinion. My personal thoughts on irritable bowel syndrome, and I could be wrong, but my personal thoughts are that irritable bowel syndrome is a term used when the doctor can't figure out what's really wrong. I mean, that's why I think it's called IBS. It's like the doctor saying I bull SHIT, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's how I felt, you know what I mean? I have a serious problem. The stomach and the cramps and, all the stuff that I go through for the IBS alone is horrible. And to just have this term loosely thrown at me, with this just wide range of symptoms, somebody that has complete opposite symptoms of me can also be diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. And it seems like it's almost too broad of a diagnosis. And I guess that's kind of how I feel about fibromyalgia too. Like, I definitely think fibromyalgia exists, but I think that there might be smaller groups under the broad spectrum of fibromyalgia, and I just think that there hasn't been enough research done to diagnose those smaller groups correctly, maybe. So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling, but that's really how I feel, because there's so many different symptoms for fibromyalgia, for IBS, for most chronic illnesses that I've researched. And so I really just think that it has to do with there not being enough awareness, not being enough funds, and just not being enough compassion to find a cure. There's just not enough people, not enough doctors that believe that these things exist and that want to dedicate their life and their research and their education to something that they really don't really believe in. So there's just a shortage on numerous things that are involved in being diagnosed with fibromyalgia and stuff like that. So I'm having major brain fog. I'm trying to stay on subject. But I just want to give you like the top 10 symptoms of fibromyalgia. And again, this is only 10. There are several, way more than 10 possible symptoms for fibromyalgia, but the main one is chronic pain that lasts over an extended period of time, not a couple days, more like a couple months at least, and the fatigue. So those are the two main symptoms. I'm also going to pull up the other symptoms. Okay, top 10 symptoms: pain all over, fatigue, sleep difficulties, brain fog, morning stiffness, muscle knots, cramping, weakness, digestive disorders, headaches, migraines, balance problems, and itchy, burning skin, or just skin sensitivity in general. Other common symptoms do also include sensitivity to all five of the senses. I, in particular, am extremely sensitive to touch and smell. Like, I can smell things from a mile away, and I'm just always nauseous because of it. Like, smells just really, really get to me. I have a hard time even pumping my own gas because of the smell. And I've been like that forever. So, those are some symptoms. And fibro fog. The other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is what you can do, meaning somebody that has a chronic illness, to to communicate your pain and what you're going through to your loved one, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a friend. One thing that really worked well for my husband and I in the beginning of our marriage was we started keeping journals that he wrote in and I wrote in, separate journals, and at the end of every week we switched and we read each other's journal. In these journals we would include daily entries, if possible, where we would write like one thing that we wanted our spouse to know that we hadn't told him in person, and then we'd also write if there was anything that our spouse did that kind of hurt us or bothered us. And then we also wrote at least one thing that we were just really grateful for about our spouse. This was an extremely helpful tool for us. It was something my mom actually recommended, and it just really helped me to be able to communicate what I was feeling to my husband so that he could understand that the way I acted wasn't a result of not loving him or, being upset with him. So it was just a really good way for me to let him know what was going on with me. But it was also a really good way for me to understand how my husband was interpreting my actions and how much it really affected him. He was really confused, and he really thought that it was his fault. So it just became just an awesome way for us to communicate to each other what was going on. And as a result, he was just able to be really supportive to me. He understood, and he didn't feel guilty anymore about it. And it just, a lot of good things came out of that. So I really believe that saved our marriage in a lot of ways. Again, that was before I even knew what fibromyalgia was. I just knew that I was different and that I was in pain a lot, and I was frustrated because I didn't understand why I was that way. So since then, since getting diagnosed, my husband does believe that I have fibromyalgia. He believes in the condition, but it's still, it's not a cakewalk. We have our issues. I'm the one that lives in chronic pain, not him. And so what seemed so obvious to me that he should just know, he really doesn't, because he's not always thinking about the pain that I'm in. And so sometimes he will go to tickle me or, just to touch me in a way that hurts. And I'll snap at him because in my mind I'm thinking, like, that I have fibromyalgia. Why would you do that? And so I'll snap at him, and then I'll realize, like, that really wasn't right, because he doesn't live with this every single day. And yes, he does know that I have this condition, but he's not constantly thinking about it 24/7. So he's going to make mistakes. And I just have to be willing to forgive him and to accept that, this is the way it is, and at least he's trying. So, I'm not perfect. I still kind of snap, when my initial response is, ouch, that hurt. I'm not thinking, gee, how can I tell this to him without hurting his feelings? I'm thinking, why did you do that? So I'm a work in progress, but I am thankful for my husband and that he at least is trying to do what he can to help me. We've got 4 kids, and so without him, I'd be in a loony bin right now. But yeah, so that's just one way that you can communicate with your loved ones. Another thing that I suggest is taking your loved one to the doctor with you, especially if they don't believe in your condition at all. Just going to a doctor appointment and saying, hey mom, will you just go to the doctor with me? And having the doctor explain to her how real this condition is, and having her have the opportunity to ask the doctor questions is really helpful, because a lot of times I've found that our loved ones um, act the way they do about our conditions, not because they don't believe, but because they're scared and they don't want to think about us, somebody that they love so much, being in chronic pain and having a condition possibly forever, and not being able to do anything about it. I mean, that can be a really helpless situation for somebody that loves you. So just try to keep that in mind when you've got a spouse, especially a spouse or a parent or a friend that just doesn't seem to want to understand. It's very possible that they're just scared. And taking them to your doctor's appointment, although maybe uncomfortable for you, could really open a lot of doors and a lot of opportunity for your loved one to really understand and to be able to be on your side and to be as supportive as possible for you. So that's really important. Another thing I can recommend is keeping your own personal journal, like a pain chronicle of what your life is like, how you feel day to day, things that are going on, flare-ups, just whatever, and document it. And that way, after a while, if you want, you can actually give it to your loved one and say, look, I've kept this journal for a while. I've documented, the way I feel. It's been therapeutic for me, but I want you to just be able to read it so that maybe you can understand what I'm going through. Because my thought on that is that I don't know many people that would keep a journal for an extended amount of time and document pain that they don't even have. You know what I mean? Like, chances are, if you've got a journal and you're writing about being in pain every day, that you probably really are in pain. And that might help your loved one believe you and understand what you're going through. I'm sure there's many, many more things that you can do. Right now, that's all I've got. Just try to be patient and understanding. YouTube can be a great source, so can Google. There is just an abundance of knowledge and of videos on these topics that can be really good for your loved ones to watch. So I hope that helps. I have some other facts that I want to share real quick. Fibromyalgia affects 3 to 5% of the general population. It occurs in people of all ages, even children. Men can have fibromyalgia too, although more women are diagnosed with it. Roughly 1/4 of people with fibromyalgia are work disabled. And there are FDA approved medications to help treat the symptoms of fibromyalgia. There's actually 3 of them. So you can look into those medications if you haven't already. 2 that I know of are Lyrica and Cymbalta. I've tried both. Expensive, and the Cymbalta was expensive, and the Lyrica I just didn't like. But everybody responds to medications differently, so I really wouldn't take my word on that. If you've got insurance and you can afford to try various medications, then the more power to you. I have done a video on supplements that have helped me, and I'm planning on doing a video on some of the medications that I've tried, prescription medications as well. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but be expecting that. So I appreciate you guys watching my video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and I would love for you to start with my first video, which is titled My Life is a Pain, Living with Fibromyalgia and Chronic Fatigue. Have a blessed day and gentle hugs.